Welcome, Dr. Betsy Greenleaf, to the Aging Fiercely podcast. I am so excited you're here. Quick list of your accolades. You are a triple board certified physician in integrative health. You are a best-selling author. You're an entrepreneur. You are an expert in menopause, perimenopause, and andropause, which is new to me. I'd never heard that before. So that's really interesting. And you are in pelvic medicine, female pelvic medicine, and reconstructive surgery. You've been doing that for over 20 years. So you know your stuff. You are the founder of the International Pause Institute. I mean, it just goes on and on.
I know. It's funny because thank you so much, Anne Marie, for having me here. I know when I see things written down, I go, there's sometimes it's tough when we get so busy and we like look at our lives. There's a tendency to be like, oh my God, I haven't done enough. I haven't done things. And then I start like listing
Yeah.
everything out and I'm like, oh shoot, that's me. I'm like, wait, I guess I have done some things.
You're like,
So,
yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
I'd say, yeah, definitely. So we are definitely going to get into vaginal health today, which I think is such an
Yes.
important topic. Just, yeah, there's just so much to learn there. And I feel like you are such a good source of information. Like I really want to dive into that. So what is your background with vaginal health and how do you help women in that area?
Yeah, so interesting enough, I've had a passion for this because myself, embarrassingly enough, I know people don't really talk about their vaginas, but my goal is to get
Today
people
we
to talk
do.
about it like, like if you sprained your ankle, you wouldn't have a problem talking about that over a luncheon, right? But
Exactly.
I myself started having yeast infections the time I start like from my early teens. And it wasn't until later on in my career that I connected it to what I was eating. And so that became kind of like a mission for me, having gone through all those issues myself, trying to figure out, well, why is this happening and why are patients getting recurrent urinary tract infections and bladder infections and vaginal infections like yeast or bacteria, and they're all connected. And it took me a while to actually make that connection, but I've finally got it all worked out. So now,
Let's hear it.
yeah. And it's funny talking about vaginas again. We're gonna say that word 10 bazillion times. So every time
Okay.
you guys are listening to this and you're screaming, by the time we're done, you it won't even phase you
Right, take
because
a
there
shot
was
every time we say the word vagina.
I know, right? There was a study that came out that says 65% of women are uncomfortable saying the word vagina. But the scary thing about that is like 80% of us are going to have a problem, like quote, down there at some point in our lives. So if
Right.
we can't say the word, like how do we ask for help? So, and
Yeah.
it's just a body part like any other. Like I
Hmm.
know I have to say, unfortunately, I've been kicked off of Instagram once so far for
Oh.
doing a post on vaginitis.
Oh
So,
my God,
yeah.
you're kidding.
Oh, and I'm always in Facebook jail because I guess vagina goes against community standards. I'm like, what do you want me to call it?
Oh my God, we can't
Like, what
even
do you
call
want
it
me to
by its
call it?
name. That's
And
insane.
then you get the vulva police that are out there. So then you get the people who are very pro women's body parts, and they're like, the outside is the vulva. You're not calling it the right thing. And I'm like, okay, all right. If we want to be technical, yes,
All
the
right.
outside of the vulva, the inner tube is the vagina. But I'm just happy if you say either one. So
Right.
like, let's just
Right.
start talking about it. So yeah.
Exactly. We need to talk about it more often for sure.
So the biggest thing is when connecting like what we're eating to our vaginal health. People are like,
Yes.
what?
This is
So
really interesting.
there is what's called a micro. First of all, we had to go back and take a look at the microbiome and look at that word. So, the microbiome is basically the types of organisms that live on different areas of the body. And so, the microbiome of our mouth is different than that of our gut, then is different of our vagina, then is different than our skin. And they all kind of interact, but they all have specific bacteria and organisms and balances that they like to have to be healthy. So the unfortunate thing is with the standard American diet, which is very high in sugars and processed foods, that often throws off our gut microbiome. And now that
Mm.
can actually lead to a number of things like chronic disease. And actually, surprisingly, it can lead to mental health issues with anxiety and depression because 90% of our happy hormones are made in our gut. And so if our gut is off, then that could actually, there's this brain gut connection, there's this feedback loop, and the brain, it doesn't, make as enough have the happy hormones, and the brain doesn't,
Right.
has more problems with mood and and anxiety and depression. But also, when we kind of throw off that gut microbiome, this leads to inflammation, and inflammation is a cause of stress in the body. And that can now trigger decreased healing, elevated cortisol, which is our stress hormones. And now, how I'm going to relate it to the vagina is that if the gut microbiome is off, the way we're built as women, the rectum or the anus and the vagina and the urethra and the bladder are just so close together that it's very easy for the bacteria to get passed back and forth. And
Mm.
I know that some women who get recurrent vaginal infections or bladder infections, they start kind of really getting down on themselves and be like, they start almost hyper cleaning because they're like, oh, I must be dirty. And so they go crazy with the cleaning. However, it doesn't matter how clean you are, those bacteria will kind of shift back and forth.
Right. Right.
And unfortunately, sometimes the hyper cleaning, like using especially all these like scented washes, can actually throw the microbiome off even further.
Right. Right.
So, but this is why, like, if you're a woman that gets like recurrent urinary tract infections or recurrent vaginal infections, whether it's like yeast infections or if you kind of notice this like fishy odor down there, a lot of times that is coming from like you treat it, let's say you treat it and it gets better and then it comes back. A lot of times it's coming because the gut microbiome is off. And
Okay.
so really we have to take a step back and look at what are you eating to try to get the vagina healthier. So,
Right. So now
yeah.
you experienced that yourself. So you said that
Yeah.
you were experiencing imbalances. You were able to actually improve your own health through diet, correct?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I did a combination of diet and I also did actually and what I like to do in my practice, I get a little more scientific, is you can actually do microbiome testing. Now, like you don't need to get this fancy, but as a doctor, I like to do that. I did a stool test, and so you send it off and they can tell you what kind of bacteria and organisms. And
Right.
sometimes we pick up parasites in people, which is actually pretty surprising, and yeasts. So we send the stool sample off, see what's there, and then that can be treated often with I mean, if I'm treating it, I tend to like to go with herbal treatments
Mhm.
because even the traditional medications that we have don't usually take care of the bacterial imbalances. Usually, it's herbals, and I'll mention some, but I don't want people doing it on their own because it's a little bit
Right.
more nuanced than that. But things like oregano oil,
Hmm.
berberine, sometimes like I'm trying to think what other ones, wormwood. There are some of these herbals can really help to kill off the bad bacteria and then getting more probiotics into the system with either fermented foods or
Right.
taking probiotics.
Right.
So, and really just kind of supporting the gut. But then there's also tests where we can actually send off swabs and look at the microbiome of the vagina and the microbiome of the bladder. And we can kind of put this whole picture
Huh.
together and go like, all right, where are things going wrong? But
Yeah.
the simplest thing is really honestly looking at your diet. Like diet and lifestyle is going to be the big key
Right. Always
because
start there.
yeah, and it's it's funny because it's like those are the easy things for us to
I
look
know. I
at.
know. They really are. And it's
And it,
like,
like without doing all these big fancy tests or like
right.
interventions or and even what I tell my patients too is like when it comes to what to eat because it gets really confusing out there. I'm like it's easy. It's what you should be eating falls into four categories. The thing that you eat had at one point it either swam, grew, walked, or flew. So if it's in any of those four categories, because
Right.
I always say Twinkies don't grow on
Mm.
trees. There's
Yeah.
no free range Doritos. So, it's the high sugary foods that really do a job on the gut and also the vagina. but also like the highly processed foods and like
Yeah.
what we think of as just junk foods, you know.
Right.
And now, listen, you can't eat perfectly all the time. You'd probably drive yourself crazy, but I say do it
Right.
80% of the time, 20% of the time, enjoy yourself. But
Right.
if you have to
No.
focus, if you have to focus on things, the two things that we're not getting in our diet as Americans or, you know, worldwide, is enough fiber
Mm.
and probiotics. Because if you think about it, the way we evolved, there wasn't refrigeration during caveman times. But I
Right.
also tell people don't get rid of your refrigerators. There's a lot of food
Right.
safety issues
My
with that.
goodness.
But the idea is we were probably eating a lot more bacteria at one point. So, and we were replenishing that healthy bacteria in our system. So the way
Ah,
we can do it in modern days is eating fermented foods, and that might be sauerkraut, kombucha, like fermented teas.
right.
If dairy doesn't bother you, then yogurts and kefir and things like that can help. Or if
Right.
you just can't tolerate any of those, then there's always good old just grab a probiotic. And
Yeah.
I tell people that people are always like, which one should I get? Well, the idea is the more microbiome diversity, meaning the more different types of bacteria that we have in our system, the healthier
Mm.
we are. So I say just go grab a probiotic that has as many different kind of bacteria as you could
Right.
see.
You read it, there's like billion, it's got like a billion chains and whatever. I'm just like, yeah, that kind of sounds like it probably is going to do what I need it to do. So I'll just take that one.
Yeah, yeah. And then also the microbiome likes to live off of fiber. So that's, you know,
Okay.
where we don't tend to get enough fiber. I mean, if you can do it with vegetables and fruits, then and grains, that's great. But sometimes we have to supplement it. And I get you know, I tell patients, and I don't, this was not my idea. I stole this from a friend of mine who's a colorectal surgeon, is she just takes, there's a soluble fiber, there's a fiber that just kind of like Benefiber is a brand, or like I get something called Sun Fiber. It
Mhm.
dissolves, so it's not gritty and it's not like it
Okay.
doesn't. And I put it in my coffee. You don't even know it's there.
Right. Yeah. Like I use like a powder that
Yeah,
I put in my smoothie and I'm like, oh,
yeah. Put it
I
in your
got,
smoothie. Put it in your coffee, and it because
yeah.
it's not gritty. You don't like it
Yeah.
dissolves. You don't even know it's there.
Yeah.
So that's a easy, quick way to sneak it in there.
Yeah. No,
So.
definitely. Those morning coffees are like, they're filled with collagen, they're filled with fiber.
And
Just,
you know, the interesting thing is I've gone down this crazy rabbit hole of the microbiome and where we connect it to all these other disease states. I mean, like I mentioned before with the gut affecting mental health, but we know that a lot of the chronic diseases and autoimmune diseases are directly either caused or worsened by poor gut health. So this is where eating healthy and getting more fiber and probiotics can help the gut health and help your overall health. But also, which has really been fascinating, is looking at the research, and I'm glad it's all catching up now. Looking at this stuff is looking at pelvic microbiome on and its effect on fertility and libido, because you know the body's pretty smart and it knows that if things are off, it's probably not an ideal time to be reproducing. So if the microbiome of the vagina is just not perfect, then there'll be this, they believe it's a feedback loop through the vagus nerve, which is the main nerve kind of going through your body to your brain. And it tells the brain, like, okay, guess what? It's not time to be reproducing. So we're going to dampen all the processes of reproduction, which
oh,
include libido. So,
right.
because your body does, your brain doesn't know the difference between like you're just having fun versus you're trying to make a baby. So the
Right.
brain is
Right.
all the same process. So this is sometimes where when I get with patients and they're, you know, they've gone on hormones because, you know, their friend down the street or whatever has been taking hormones and now
Yeah.
their sex life is perfect and they go, wait, I've been taking hormones and nothing's happening with my sex life. Like, we have to go look at what are the stressors that are affecting you utilizing those hormones properly. And it could be the microbiome being off in the gut or the vagina. And they found that for both men and women that that can affect sex drive.
Oh, interesting.
So, yeah.
So how in
So
that
another reason to eat healthy. So every time you want to eat a McDonald's hamburger, think that it's gonna be like affect your sex drive. Maybe you won't
how is
want to
this
eat
going
one
to
of those.
affect my libido?
Yeah. So it's like the anti-Viagra.
Yeah, right. Oh, that's hilarious. I'm gonna tell my husband no more McDonald's.
I know.
You gotta stop
Yes,
that.
exactly.
And you test that through stool samples, right? You were saying that earlier.
Yeah,
To test the vaginal
yeah.
microbiome is
Well,
a
we test the gut microbiome through stool samples, and that there's a number of different companies out there that do it. I just happen to like a company called GI Map, because sometimes you're lucky enough that it gets covered by insurance, but unfortunately, these tests are not typically covered by insurance. Same thing with the vaginal microbiome. For some reason, when I first came out, some of these tests when they first came out, they kind of were covered by insurance, but now, insurance has gotten kind of weird over the last couple years. So a lot of those tests are not covered. And there's a couple different companies. The one I like is called Microgen, but I think there's some that patients can get the test themselves. And I'm blanking out on, oh gosh, I'm blanking out. There's two companies where you can get it
okay.
yourself, and I'm kind of blanking out on the names of them right now. But I will warn you, when you get those vaginal microbiome tests, and basically it's just a little swab, it's like a Q-tip you put in the vagina, and then you kind of like swish it around in there, and then you like send it off, and it takes about 2 weeks to get those results. But I will warn you, the results come back looking crazy. Like people always get panicked when they see their results.
Okay.
And this is where it really does take a lot of interpretation, because there's normally bacteria there. So
Right.
there's stuff that we want to see there.
Yeah.
And sometimes some of these tests are so advanced now because they're using a technology which is called next generation sequencing. It's kind of like walking into a room. I compare. So some people might have heard of PCR testing. They've did it a lot during COVID.
Hmm.
PCR testing is a way that they genetically look for the presence of certain bacteria and yeast and organisms, but PCR will only look for what it's been told to look for. It's kind of like walking into a room and going like, "Hey, I'm looking for Bob." And you point to somebody, "Is your name Bob?" "No." "Okay, then I don't care who you are." And then go to the next one. "Oh, okay, I don't care who you are."
Right.
And so it only identifies Bob. Where
Right.
next generation sequencing, it's like walking into a room of people and being like, "Okay, what's your name?" "Susie." "Okay, what's your name?" "Sally." "Okay." And
Right.
then you're writing it.
God.
So now all of a sudden they're discovering bacteria and organisms because it's all a DNA test that they never were able to discover before, because these were things that didn't necessarily grow out in a culture. That's how they used to grow them out and then identify them. So
Hmm.
now we're at the point where we're finding so much they don't even have names for some of these bacteria. Like there's one that's like bacteria vaginosis associated bacteria, number one and two, because they know it's associated with bacterial vaginosis, but they don't actually have a name for it yet. So
Right. Okay.
I just say when you do these tests, like take them with a grain of salt. Don't panic because everybody looks at them. They're like, "Oh my God, what?"
Right.
Get with somebody that knows how
Much.
to read
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. And
So,
then do you take that? Can you take that to like your gynecologist and they can read it for you? Like who's like the best person to go to when
I
you get these
find,
tests done?
having been trained in traditional gynecology, I will tell you myself that they don't train us in this stuff. And I've been doing these kind of tests for about 15 years. So like I have experience in it, but I will tell you, if you have to pick a general group of doctors that probably can interpret this better than a regular gynecologist, would be an integrative or functional medicine doctor.
Okay.
So they're usually, someone who like I would ask them like, "Do you have any experience in the microbiome?" That would
Mm,
be like, yeah. So, I
right.
mean, I would still start with the gynecologist and see where to go, but um and now here's an actually really easy thing too, because now my brain is flipping to not just diet, but like let's say the bacteria or the yeast in the vagina is thrown off. One of the problems that we get as women is sometimes it's just itchy down there, and like that's the first sign that itchy is a little bit of a discharge. And so often, what women will go to and reach for is yeast medicine,
Okay.
when a majority of the time it's not yeast, it's actually bacteria. So, the interesting thing is the makers of the yeast medicines, I'm not going to mention the companies, but the ones that sell their over-the-counter products, they got very upset a few years ago when boric acid became really readily available over the counter
Hmm.
because it was a threat to their industry. Because, what do people usually reach for? Yeast medicine. Well, it doesn't always work.
Right.
Boric acid, though, has been around forever and ever and ever. It just, probably since the little bit before the pandemic did it become available over the counter. You used to have to get it compounded, especially mixed up in pharmacies to be used in the vagina. But why boric acid is so great is that it balances the pH of the vagina. And so basically, it makes the environment in the vagina very acidic, which the other organisms don't like. So it kind of chases away the organisms. So it's nice because it's going to hit things, whether it's yeast or whether it's
Right, right. Yeah, it's
bacteria.
not targeting
So
anything.
yeah, and that's, now there's, I mean, 10, I would love to make my own, but there's already 10 bazillion companies that are selling their boric acid over the counter. So
Oh,
there's a lot of different ones out there. I will happen to say though, there is one brand, the first one that came on the market, and I tend to stick with that one because they're just pretty reliable, is a company called PhD Feminine Health. And you can find that pretty much anywhere. But I usually have people do that like once or twice daily, depending on how bad their symptoms are, for about a week, and that usually resets things.
oh, that's
But
interesting.
yeah, but the thing is to know that, listen, I know it's so much nicer to just do things on your own and not take time out of a schedule and have to go sit in a doctor's waiting room. But if it doesn't get better with one round of things, it might be something else. You
Right,
don't want to put that off. You want to, see a healthcare practitioner. But
right.
I really like boric acid because the vagina is very acidic. It's naturally has a pH of about 3.5 to 4.5. So that's considered acidic. Like water is a pH of 7.
Okay.
What doesn't make sense, and this is something I've never been able to figure out in nature, like why the universe, God, whoever's in charge of nature, I don't know, why they would make it this way, but the pH of semen is like 7 or 8, but the pH of the vagina is 3.5 to 4.5. So, if we think about that, if you're a person who engages in sex with men and semen gets in the vagina, you're actually going to throw off the pH balance of the vagina. So,
Yeah.
temporarily. So, some women are very sensitive to that, and I don't know why.
Um,
Some women are more sensitive. Like some people have no problems with that and they live their lives and everything's perfect. But there's some
right.
women who every single time they have sex, with their partners, with their husbands, with whoever, they're getting vaginal infections or urinary tract
Oh my
infections.
gosh. Oh,
So,
wow.
a nice and quick, easy way to deal with that is use like something like boric acid afterwards, just to kind
What do
of
you
help
like? Is it like a pill or something? Or like how
yeah,
do
they
you...
co- they come in either little suppositories that melt or they come in little capsules that have to be put
Okay.
in the vagina. Yeah, so you
Oh,
just kind of.
okay.
Now, I will warn you, you will get a heavy discharge using one of these products. Um, and people
That's
always ask,
just cleaning it out.
yeah, it's just, you know what? Here's it. People understand this analogy much better. Like if you get like a piece of like an eyelash in your eye or a piece of like dust in your eye, what does your eye do? It waters to flush it
Right.
out.
Right.
That's what the
Okay.
vagina is doing.
Okay.
It's just creating a heavy
Don't
discharge
freak
to
out.
flush. Yeah. So,
It's all normal. It's just
yeah, it's all done, but it's just cleaning things out.
getting rid of it. Got it. Got it. Yeah, there's so many like intricacies to this like whole area, and it's wild the amount of information that we know and the information that we're learning and have yet to discover. So it's like
Yeah.
there's just so much going on in this one area that it's a lot.
And it's also, just when you think you got things figured out too, all of a sudden menopause happens, and now
Right.
that's a whole different story. Because when we're young and we have estrogen, the vaginal tissue responds to that hormone, and it basically the vaginal tissue is multi-levels thick. And so it's nice and thick and it's actively growing.
Mhm.
And what ends up happening is because it's actively growing, the cells that kind of outgrow or outlive their lifespan slough off, just like our skin is always sloughing off. We're making new skin cells. But when the skin sloughs off, it contains a chemical called glycogen. And glycogen is the food source for lactobacillus, which is the main healthy bacteria in the vagina.
Okay.
So when we're young, we're well, when we're young and not on birth control, because unfortunately birth control can thin out the vagina, but when we're young, we're usually making enough glycogen to feed the healthy bacteria, so everything is typically in balance for the most part. But then
Right.
all of a sudden we hit menopause and that vaginal tissue starts to thin because our hormones have gone down. Now the healthy bacteria doesn't have a food source, and this is where now we get these shifts in the microbiome in perimenopause and menopause and beyond, where during that age range, we're now more susceptible to recurrent vaginal infections and recurrent urinary tract infections.
Right.
So the cruel trick is like, yay, no more periods, but
Right.
hey, now there's things like odor and itching and burning and, you know, dryness and more
Right.
urinary tract infections. But the good news is we don't have to live with it. There's so many things that can be done. And so,
Right. So
from
does like hormone replacement therapy help with that part of it? So it is actually keeping the lining a little bit more thick?
it can, sometimes with hormone replacement, it doesn't get to the vaginal tissue the way we want it to. So
Okay.
sometimes we have to do additional hormones to the vulva and vagina. So that is one option is just doing hormones, and you can use anything from estrogen to something called DHEA, which is a precursor to estrogen, to testosterone will even work down in the vaginal area. There are a number of different prescription medications, and there's like suppositories and creams and even rings that can go in the vagina. So there's a whole range of things prescription. And then on the other side of things, we have actually the choice of there's a lot of regenerative medicine options. Back in 2014, the first vaginal laser came out on the market.
Okay.
And yeah, and that was actually fun because people were like, why would I laser my vagina? But lasers, just like lasers that are available for the face, have been around since the 1980s. It's basically it's using light energy to create a micro injury to the tissue, micro trauma.
Right.
And then when the body heals, it floods the area with growth factors and it tricks the body into healing itself.
Oh, that's
So
interesting.
that's how all these aesthetic treatments work, is that they basically use different modalities to trick the body into healing itself without using hormones.
Okay.
So once the first laser came on the market in the United States, it kind of opened this floodgate of, well, wait a minute, if we can use lasers, what other things that we're doing to people's faces can we do down there?
Right.
And pretty much anything from platelet-rich plasma injections, which is using your own blood and taking out the growth factors and then applying it to the vagina. They use sound waves to regenerate the tissue. They use heat to regenerate the tissue. Lasers, I already mentioned.
Right.
Uh, Plasma energy, which is like little lightning bolts that they use to do
Okay.
that. Then there's some home therapies like red light. Red light is incredibly
Red light therapy.
yeah, it basically stimulates the anti-aging powerhouses of the cells called the mitochondria. And so
Mhm.
there's red light wands that you can now stick in the vagina. There
Okay.
is like carbon dioxide gels that you can put in the vagina, which attracts oxygen and heals the tissue. So there is a crazy range of things you can now do to your
Oh my
vagina
goodness.
to keep it young and healthy. So,
So
yeah.
wait, where do you get these things? Because you have to go through the doctor, or are these like things that you can just like, where do we get these?
Yes.
I want to
Okay. So
know.
some of these things have to be done by practitioners. So things like
Okay.
lasers and things like that have to be, actually, or plate leverage plasma.
But,
Those Some of those have to be done by practitioners, and that can be anywhere from your gynecologist to some of the anti-aging clinics to some of the med spas will do this kind of work.
okay. Okay.
So, yeah,
All right.
then because of that, this what happened was during the pandemic and people couldn't get out of their houses, that's when we saw a big flood of the do-it-yourself products that you can
Right.
do at home. And so there's things like the red light wand. I happen to have a website called pelvicfloorstore.com and we sell them on there. So there's that. There's a company called CO2 Lift that makes that carboxy therapy.
Mhm.
There is another company called Anti-Age that makes a peptide suppository that can help heal the vagina. I carry all of those, but you can actually go search out those companies separately if you want to. So
Right, but yours is pelvic floor
pelvic floor
store.com.
store. Yeah, and actually, I will give your listeners a 10% off
Yeah.
code. So tell me what you want the code to be and I'll make it for you.
Okay. Yes, we will set that up and we'll put that in the show notes for sure.
Okay. Yeah,
Because there's a
yeah.
lot of stuff here. Like, yeah, it's almost like how do you even know like where to start, what to
When
get?
it's a little overwhelming.
It's so overwhelming. There's so many things now. Yeah, it's really, but do you find these treatments work? Like all like what you have on your store is kind of like a curated uh things that work or
Yeah, well,
like
basically
your
the store
favorite kinds
came,
of products.
yeah, the store came out of where I was recommending products to patients, and I was like, go to this website, go to that website. And one time, one of my patients said, why can't there just be one place where I can get everything?
Mm.
And I was like,
Okay.
huh. And this was back in like 2018, and I didn't know anything about making websites. I didn't even know I could have hired somebody that could have done
Oh,
this. I
yeah.
did not know anything, but I was like, I basically YouTubed how to make a website, and I built the whole thing myself. It took me
Nice.
about 4 months, and now I know
But
I
you
could
got
hire
it.
somebody. I could have hired somebody to do it in like a day, but yeah. So I basically started carrying all the things that I liked and recommended to patients on there.
Nice.
So yeah, so that's how it kind of
Okay,
happened.
good. Yeah, we will definitely link to that for sure. I'll put that in the show notes and we'll get a discount going. I also wanted to get into just the mental health aspect of it, like
Mm,
because I know that's such a big thing. Like I feel like a lot of women, as they go through this phase, is they're starting to take antidepressants because things are
yeah.
happening or they're feeling mentally drained or depressed or and is there a connection between just, the overall health and the gut biome and all of that. Yeah, I just kind of want to speak to that because I think that's really important to understand.
Yes. So there's a combination of two things that are happening there. So as we're kind of changing from perimenopause into postmenopause, is we do get a decline of some of the hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, which we typically think of affecting kind of like our reproductive health, but they're also neurotransmitters.
Yeah.
So they really have an activity on the brain. And some estrogen is one that's kind of hit or miss because estrogen is one that can kind of make people bitchy. It's kind of the one that's responsible for PMS. So sometimes people
Really?
feel really good on estrogen if they take it as a replacement. Sometimes it makes them more bitchy. So that's one that's kind of hit or miss. I will tell you, testosterone for both men and women, that one is actually the only hormone out of all the hormones that is considered a controlled substance. So that one you absolutely have to get from a practitioner
Okay.
and they have to write it every month. They can't just give you like a year's supply because
Right.
it's considered a
Wow.
controlled substance because people feel so good on it. It actually helps with
Oh.
energy and that brain fog.
Oh, wow.
So where progesterone tends to be more have more of a calming effect on the body, this is when we tell people if they are taking progesterone, take it at night because it can really help with sleep.
Oh,
Because
interesting.
sometimes people take their progesterone in the morning and they complain of fatigue. Well, one of the side effects of progesterone is
Fatigue.
being more tired, but it's really, really great for people who started having sleeping problems during this time. So
Ah,
some of it is the hormones, but the other aspect is the microbiome, because there's also not just could we potentially be eating a bad diet, maybe that threw off our microbiome? Were we on antibiotics at some point in our life that threw off the microbiome? Stress, any kind of stress will throw off the microbiome.
yeah.
But even they've connected this change that the microbiome shifts in menopause. So we know that if you're not making enough happy hormone in your gut, that can be adding to this anxiety and depression that we're seeing. So it's a combined thing with the gut microbiome and the hormones that's happening around
Yeah.
this time. But
That's
unfortunately, I see way too many women who are just I think not listened to. And they're just like, I don't want to blame the doctors because I think they're doing the best with the tools that they have, with the knowledge that they have.
Right.
Because what I've done is I've gone beyond, I was kind of unhappy with the tools and knowledge I had, and I kept going, well, there's got to be more, there's got to be more.
Right.
And so I found the other answers, but
Yeah.
not everybody does that. So their tools are to be like, well, let's give you an antidepressant. And
Yeah.
so I see a lot of women, especially, starting in their 40s, being on these
Yeah.
antidepressants and anti-anxiety medicines. And I
Yeah.
will tell you also from personal experience, I had a hysterectomy when I was 41 and started having some mood issues. And everyone just told me, like, oh, this is menopause. Here's some antidepressants. And I,
Right.
I personally found that the antidepressants didn't work on me. And it wasn't until I discovered that my gut microbiome was off and I fixed that I was able to get off of them and not have any issues.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying there isn't a role. I mean, I'm not saying like let's get everybody get off your
No,
antidepressants
no,
because
no, of course not.
there's a time and place for them. So make sure you're working with a
100%.
practitioner
Yes.
on
Yes,
that.
yes. Just that
But
it just
I,
seems like it's always such like an obvious next step. Oh, you're not feeling well here. Here's 10
yeah,
milligrams, and it's not
yeah,
always necessary, but in cases it is. Some cases it definitely is.
yeah.
It's very helpful. But
And they are just, as they're getting deeper into this microbiome research, they're actually discovering that certain bacteria have certain effect on the body. So I think what we're going to see in the future is actually almost maybe getting prescribed certain bacteria for certain conditions or even mood
that would
issues.
be
They're not at
interesting.
that point yet. So
Right.
despite like a lot of the vitamin companies trying to sell you things for like, here's a probiotic for mood. We're
Right.
not, the research doesn't 100% support it yet, but I think that's where we're going.
Right.
But like I will tell you, for example, like yeast, for example, if you have a yeast overgrowth in your gut, you tend to have more issues. There can be more irritability, but there also can be more food cravings, especially sugar cravings.
Hmm.
So, and the reason why
Um,
you get the sugar cravings is because yeast likes to live on sugar.
yeah,
So
yeah.
they actually is able to hijack your nervous system and actually cause you to get sugar cravings. So
Fascinating.
you will eat more and feed it, which is crazy, this effect that these bacteria have on our brain function.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just goes to show like that's something that we do know. Just imagine all the connections that we don't know that are going on that are just driving us completely bonkers and we don't know why. But
Yeah, they even found like when it comes to pain syndromes. Well, for example, women tend to are more susceptible to pain syndromes than men. Um, Even though I think we tolerate pain a lot better, but it's because it's a combination of estrogen makes us more sensitive to pain. And then also there's certain like lactobacillus. If our lactobacillus levels are low, that can affect our perception of pain. So it's a
Hmm.
hormone and gut microbiome kind of connection too.
Right. Yeah. It
So
seems like there's
yeah,
a lot of delicate balances that we are
yeah,
becoming more aware of. But I think the first step is really looking at our diet. And it's interesting to me, because I do work with a lot of women who, the first line of defense is, yes, let's look at your diet as to why you're not losing weight, right? So I look at it just on that level. There's so much resistance when it
yeah,
comes to wanting to lose weight, but and wanting to change their diet, but not being able to do it because it is a lot of work. You
yeah.
have to like start like writing out everything you eat, paying attention to the foods, and then consciously making different choices. And those different choices are really difficult to make because you're just so ingrained in like your habits and the way you've been. And even though you understand the full range of benefits that come from just changing your diet, it's still so hard to like get people to move past that and just be like, but it's going to be for the best. You're going to feel so much better.
Exactly.
And now knowing that it goes like even deeper into like, gut health and vaginal health and brain health and how it's all connected, it's just really, hopefully it'll be a little bit more reason or motivation to actually get people to pay more attention to what they are eating, even though it is so difficult. But
Yeah, and chronic disease too.
right.
And you want to hear a fun story, a fun study they did with the microbiome? This is another fun one. I go down rabbit holes with this. They took they took twins. One twin was thin and one twin I'm just going to say is fat. I know that's not politically correct, but I'm just going to say that for this purpose. So they were twins, a thin twin and a fat twin. They took the microbiome of each twin and fed it to mice. The mice were normal weighted.
Hmm.
The mouse that got the thin twins microbiome stayed thin. The mouse that got the fat twins microbiome became fat.
Oh, interesting.
And then they switched their diets. So then the fat mouse became thin, the thin mouse became fat. So they
Oh,
actually found when it came to obesity and metabolism, there is a microbiome source.
oh,
So, and this also once again goes back to what we're eating, because if we're eating a lot of like processed foods, our microbiome is not going to be as diverse, meaning we're not going to have as many different types of bacteria, and we might not even have healthy bacteria. And so that can affect inflammation, that can affect obesity, that can affect weight loss resistance. The more different types of whole foods we're eating, the more diverse our microbiome is. And so
yeah.
we're gonna actually develop those healthy bacteria over time. Now,
Right.
the funny thing was they did another, and I'm sure you see this all the time in January. That happens every year. People have been just kind of eating pretty crappy for the holidays, if not have been eating crappy for years. And all of a sudden, January 1st comes and they're like, I'm going to eat healthy. And they
Yeah.
switch to this like kale diet and they're eating all these salads.
They're
And then
miserable.
they give it up. They give it up because they complain of bloating and gastric upset and may get diarrhea or constipation. Their bowels get all thrown off. And
Yeah.
they found with these mouse studies was that when you abruptly changed your diet, your microbiome couldn't handle it because you don't have the bacteria developed in your system yet that will break down plant products. So you
Mm,
can't go from eating like hamburgers and fries to eating salads like immediately. Now, that doesn't mean like, all right, well, just don't go to the salads. It
right.
found in this one study that if you gradually kind of kept your old diet and kind of decreased it while you were adding the healthy foods, that was a better more tolerable transition while you were building up that microbiome.
Yeah,
And they haven't figured out the exact timing of how to do that, but I usually tell people like over a period of 8 weeks, kind of like
right.
slowly decrease the bad foods and
Yeah.
slowly increase and I hate to say bad and good, but
Well,
you know what
right. Processed, less processed.
Yes, yes, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's true
yeah,
because your body does need time to catch up because it's so used to eating in one particular way. It has all those, reactions and chemical reactions down to a science, and then you switch it up, and the body's like, "Wait a minute, we didn't do this. Like this isn't in our like working memory right now, so we need to like build on that." So yeah, it's encouraging because it's like, okay, don't give up. Just, modify it. Keep modifying. I'm always like, don't go back.
yes.
Just keep modifying and just keep moving in the right direction. And eventually, and you do have to give it time. And that's one of the things that, again, is like another struggle. Like, I want it now. I want it now. And
Oh yeah,
we all do. But it is time to get your body more acclimated to a new way of eating and thinking. So it's like all of that. And we could go into like the psychology and the nervous
oh
system,
yeah,
all that. I mean, you can just really go down a rabbit hole many times.
oh yeah, definitely, definitely.
So my goodness, this is a ton of information. Yeah, like what, I don't know, what kind of like advice can you give someone like for the woman who is just trying to get her head on straight, who is just feeling overwhelmed, like what's like one really good piece of advice you can give her to just be like, I don't know, it's gonna be okay, or
It
there's
is,
things you can
it is.
do.
I think the biggest thing is really honor yourself and your own body, because a lot of women put everybody else ahead of themselves. And that's where we end up getting in trouble,
Mhm.
because stress really, more so than diet or any of this other stuff, stress is really the common denominator. So when you're like running around trying to balance 10 bazillion things at once, really setting aside time for yourself and doing the simple things that make a giant difference in your health, getting enough sleep. Because if you get less than 6 hours of sleep, you have a 23% increased risk of obesity. Less than 5 hours of sleep, you have like I think it's like something like 75% increased risk of obesity. And it's just really because it affects inflammation and healing. So getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep, drinking enough fluids, which I know sometimes I don't do, but
Mhm.
getting 8, 9, 10 glasses of water
Yeah.
in a day. And it doesn't have to be water as long as it's decaffeinated fluids. Trying to eat healthy and don't go crazy trying to switch everything all at once. Just gradually switch it. And, if you can do it 80% of the time, then you're really doing a great job. 20% of the time, like go have the cake and the cookies and enjoy
Yeah.
yourself at a birthday party or holiday.
Right.
You don't
Right.
want to put too much pressure on yourself and just take a moment to breathe. Like find something that you enjoy that's relaxing is really, really important. And actually schedule it in your day.
Yeah.
Because honestly, if you don't put it on your calendar, like some me time, other things are going to sneak in.
Yeah,
So,
no, absolutely. And I'm just curious, like what, because I know a lot of women do suffer from like they wake up in the middle of the night and they can't fall back asleep. And, it really does affect their overall well-being. What are some things that you suggest for women to either take or to do or routines or some habits that maybe can help? Because I've heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, sometimes you wake up and that 3 a.m. wake up is because your cortisol levels have kind of shot
yep,
up. So now that's
yep.
flooding your system. Like, what can you do to kind of alleviate that problem?
Yeah, usually that 3 to 4 o'clock in the morning thing is like a
Yeah.
cortisol thing that also happens to get worse in menopause. So, once again, trying doing everything you can to identify the stressors in your life and kind of mitigate them, if not get rid of them.
Yeah.
The other tricks are, I really like using guided meditations, especially music that has something called binaural beats. So
Yeah.
binaural beats is if you have to listen to them in headphones. There's slightly different tones in each ear. You don't perceive it as different tones, but your body
Mhm.
does. And it actually is a way to almost biohack your brain and it like automatically shifts it into a relaxed state. So those are really great in the middle of the night to do that. Something as simple as breathing, like breath work. I'm doing my integrated medicine fellowship right now with Dr. Andrew Weil, and he's really big on
Oh,
breath work.
yes.
So he
Oh my
does something
gosh.
that's I tell everybody just do box breathing. It's
Mhm.
four, it's an inhale to the count of four, hold it for four, exhale for a count of four, and then hold it for four.
Mhm.
And do that like 3 or 4 times,
Yeah.
and that can throw you into a more relaxed state. So, now if it's 3 o'clock in the morning, you don't really want to be taking melatonin at that point in time. But
Right. Yeah.
things like at the beginning of the night that some people get relief with are magnesium. I like one called magnesium threonate because it's threonate because it's the one magnesium that will cross into the brain and that magnesium can help with relaxation.
Oh,
So
interesting.
magnesium, melatonin,
Mhm.
valerian root, chamomile,
Right. Right. Yeah.
some
Soothing.
warm milk.
You gotta
Good
settle
old,
them.
good old warm milk. If you can do dairy, not if you can't do dairy, don't do that because then you'll be
Right.
mad at
Yeah.
me.
No. Warm oat milk. I don't know.
Yeah, it does. I don't think it does. It works the same,
No,
but
but I love
things
the
like
idea of the binaural beats and the breathing, the breath work. I 100% agree with that as well. I find that that definitely calms me down. The shorter inhales sometimes and the longer exhales can also be like something that really relaxes you. But yeah, I think that those are really great options for, just to help because it's so important, sleep. We all know that we
and
are just not our best selves when we
And
don't.
you know what? I've learned, unfortunately, the hard way, because this is from personal experience. I know there's days that I want to just keep working on my computer and try to get one more thing done. But honestly, you never catch up. There's always something else to do. So shut those computers off, get away from those screens. I try to make it a rule that I shut my computers off like around 7. I like to do it at 6, but it never happens. Around 7 o'clock at night and just get off all screens because the
Yeah.
lights from the screens will
Yeah,
affect your
that's
sleep
true.
too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, like get the TV out of the bedroom. I'm like a big person, like
Yes.
no screens in the bedroom. It's not helping you at all.
Keep the bedroom cold on the colder
Yes.
side. I know I don't like the cold, but you actually sleep better when it's cold.
Totally.
So, or
Yeah, I agree.
cool.
Yes, yes. My gosh, this has been amazing. There's just, I know we could go on and on and on for
Yeah, yeah.
hours. But I appreciate you taking the time, and I feel like we've just learned so much, and it's like really good to open our eyes to all the options that are now out there. And yeah, and I will link to your store, and thank you for just giving us just a plethora of really good vaginal health information.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I had so much fun. One last thing to mention, not only the pelvic floor store, but I also have a free hormone quiz where you can kind of get an idea of how your hormones are doing. And that's at pauseinstitute.com. And that's pause like menopause, Pause
Okay.
Institute.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely. I will take that for sure. And I'm sure a lot of
Yeah.
women will get on there and do that as well. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Betsy Greenleaf. This has been so wonderful. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.